Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the DGAP morning briefing. I'm Henning Hoff, Executive Editor of Internationale Politik Quarterly. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine, which caused us to launch these morning briefings, enters day 694. So we are approaching 700 days of war. There has been little movement along the front line in eastern and southern Ukraine. This week's attention moved to Davos, where the fourth meeting of national security advisors held further talks on the Ukrainian peace formula. At the opening day of the World Economic Forum on Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who attended in person for the first time, called on his audience to strengthen Ukraine's economy, promising, "We will strengthen your security." Zelensky also criticized those who were hesitant to support Kyiv without reservations. Every "do not escalate" sounded like "you will prevail" to Vladimir Putin, Zelensky said. This morning, however, we want to talk about an escalation of a different kind. We are looking at Poland, where the Law and Justice Party, known by its Polish acronym PiS, is not behaving in a way casual observers like myself had expected. Indeed, PiS seems ready to undermine the democratic change brought about by parliamentary elections in the fall. President Andrej Duda, who is siding with PiS, first delayed the appointment of new Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Then he vetoed Tusk's government's December budget bill. And last week, he turned the dispute about two convicted PiS lawmakers into a full-blown crisis. How will this crisis pan out? What does it mean for Polish-German relations, for the Weimar Triangle, and European politics in general? To discuss this, I have the pleasure of welcoming Joanna Becker, who is Deputy Managing Director of Warsaw-based Politica Insight, a leading consultancy connected to the renowned news magazine of the same name, offering political analysis and business intelligence. Good morning, Joanna.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
It's our pleasure. And also with us is Ambassador Rolf Nikel, Vice President of the German Council on Foreign Relations. In his distinguished diplomatic career, Rolf Nikel was inter alia Deputy National Security Advisor at the Chancellery, and in his final posting, Ambassador to Poland between 2014 and 2020. He is also the author of a recent well-received book on Polish-German relations titled Feinde, Fremde, Freunde, Enemies, Strangers, Friends. Welcome, Rolf Nikel.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
It's our pleasure to have you, Rolf. Some quick housekeeping remarks. Each speaker will offer their analysis on the current situation in Poland and its repercussions. After some discussion on the panel, about 25 minutes in, we will be opening for your questions and comments. For the Q&A, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and put your question to the panel. You're also welcome to submit questions and comments via the chat function. Also, we are trying to make the briefing a little more concise than the past, and aim today to finish by 9:15, 9:15. And with a word of thanks to Jan Stöckmann from the Director's Office at the DGAP and the DGAP Central and Eastern European expert Milan Nitsch. Both are instrumental in bringing this series forward. And to our colleagues in the events and the communication teams, I'd like to start with Joanna and ask her, what is your analysis of the present situation in Warsaw? And as an extra point, did you see it coming?
Thank you again for the invitation and the introduction to today's meeting. Did we see it coming? I think that when we were speaking before the elections, we expected chaos afterwards, no matter what the outcome would be. But it is true that these past 37 days of the new government in power have led to turmoil on the political scene. We encounter situations without precedent, and the level of emotions is very high. If I try to give a general overview, I would say that we're observing a power struggle, pieces fighting to keep control of what it can after not being able to form a majority in the government, because if I may remind you, peace in terms of the amount of votes won the elections, and the president gave peace the possibility to form a government, even though the majority was in the hands of the then democratic opposition and now those in power. And on the other hand, Donald Tusk is eager to deliver on his electoral promises on the restoration of the rule of law without any negotiations with anyone from the opposition's camp, what is expected from the opposition's camp, and on exposing malpractices of members and nominees of the former government. And all of this, we need to remember that he is operating in extremely challenging conditions, changed our legal system, bills that have been passed that are against the Constitution. So he's either accused of acting against unlawfully, let's say, and navigating through a densely mined terrain. Peace has used the last 8 years to change the political system, as I said, politicize institutions that are of crucial importance for any government to govern, independently of these external political influences. External still meaning Peace's influence. And the second criteria we need to take into account when we analyze the situation is, of course, that the president is from the political camp that is in opposition, making it difficult for any legislative process because he has the power, the veto power, and the governing majority and Prime Minister Donald Tusk knows what he can do and how that he will not agree to passing bills, and this option is practically blocked. And the president in the past weeks, in his rhetoric, has shown that the months of cohabitation that are in front of us will be marked by conflicts between the president and the governing camp. So this is, again, something that will extremely influence what is happening, and also the way in which the government will have to operate. So the way the government took over public media, as well as the National Prosecutor's Office, show that Donald Tusk will take a tough stance and on issues where he knows that the president will resist. And also what we've been observing in the past weeks is that Donald Tusk and his ministers will try to find any mistake that Peace has made in the last years, introducing new laws, every gray area, to make the changes they see and to see necessary. Again, when I talked about what Peace has changed, we need to remember that the Constitutional Tribunal is also politicized, so we will hear about the Constitutional Tribunal a lot. Issues with the central bank, again, a Peace nominee there, so we will hear that the conflict is already open. The judiciary full of Peace nominees will, and this is why we hear about such extreme words as legal dualism in Poland. Every side will try to discredit what the government is doing. As I said, saying that they're acting illegally, and something that is very important is that time is crucial for Donald Tusk. He knows that he has these first few months to show that he is delivering and to use this strong political mandate that he has. And also the polls, although here I'm quite sure that the polls that are favorable towards the coalition do not show exactly that these polls are growing because of what is happening now, but in general they show a strong political mandate for Donald Tusk. And one more thing before I finish that I think we need to also remember when observing and analyzing this situation and what is happening is that the government is operating, and also Peace that is trying to build its political capital now on everything that is that is happening, and using all these strong words and analogy towards civil war, authoritarianism, using words, such expressions as political prisoners towards people who have been convicted, the state of emergency. They are using this to build this political capital. And on the other side, Donald Tusk is using these months to show that he's efficient. Also because we have local elections coming, European elections coming, presidential elections coming. So the government is operating, and what we are observing is an ongoing political campaign, permanent state really of electoral campaigning in Poland.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Let's go to Rolf Nikel now. Sort of, do you share this assessment, sort of, or maybe another word of to trying how bad is it? Is it a constitutional crisis?
Thank you very much. I basically share what has been said by my predecessor. Confrontation, yes. Power struggle, yes. But so far, and I insist on so far, no constitutional crisis and no state crisis. The institutions of the Third Polish Republic are basically functioning. The Prime Minister Tusk has won the acute crisis so far on at least 2 of the 3. We have had, of course, the question of the media, but the public media. The new media are having their normal, not necessarily totally normal, but they have their program. The 2 peace functionaries, civil servants that have been jailed. So those 2 acute crises are under control. Tusk has shown in all these cases that he is capable to act, and also has been creative. So I would, for the time being, say that the first round won by Tusk, but of course the question is broader, and Joanna, of course, alluded to that. The main problem is, how can you change back, or how can you turn around the situation in which the former government has used non-constitutional and non-legal means to change the judiciary and other things? How can you change that back with rule of law means that are acceptable in Poland, and of course also on the European level? The 2 basic problems that we have, despite the acute problems, and of course you can add to that the national prosecutor, where the situation is a little bit more difficult, but I can explain that later if necessary, is how to define the rules, the concrete rules of this new cohabitation between the new government by Donald Tusk, and President Andrej Duda, who of course belongs to the old camp. That is a tricky question, and in every cohabitation, and we have all this in other countries as well, how to exactly define that is quite complicated. That's the first basic problem. The second basic problem is the legitimacy of institutions. Of course, the way peace has acted in the past has led to a situation in which some institutions, and very important ones, do not command consent by all actors. That is, of course, the case specifically of the judiciary and of course the Constitutional Tribunal. So what we will see in the next couple of weeks, months, I think, is an intensification of that power struggle. Justice Minister Bodnar has announced that he will attack the heart of the judiciary transformation that peace has undertaken, which is the National Judiciary Council. And that one will be quite difficult, because whereas in the case of the public media, you could do this by regulation, which doesn't need the consent of the president. In the case of the National Judiciary Council, you would probably need a law and therefore the intervention of the president, and then Tusk or Bodnar will be against the president and against the Constitutional Tribunal. That is going to be a really, really difficult situation. And how to come out of that, we will see. And of course, Joanna is totally right. There will be the elections, the local elections, the European elections, and the presidential elections, which will add to all this. But let's not forget, in the present situation, the quite broad coalition holds together very well. Public opinion is rather in favor of the new government. Demonstrations undertaken by peace are relatively limited. I mean, 100,000 according to observers is quite good, specifically because it's cold. But it's not. But it's pale against the 500,000 or 1 million people that the opposition brought to the streets in the last year. So again, I would say this is a worrisome, a serious power struggle, but so far it's not a constitutional crisis and it's not a state crisis.
Thank you very much. Let's now go back to Joanna again, sort of addressing the question, sort of what it all means for Polish foreign affairs, as well as sort of bilateral relations with Germany. Some people ask, why has Donald Tusk not been coming to Berlin? I think there's a very specific answer to that, with peace sort of using sort of a certain kind of uses history in, sort of in a way that makes us difficult. Maybe can you give us a sense sort of what that means sort of in external affairs, whether it's pan-European or bilateral or the Weimar Triangle?
Okay. I think the key, I think it is important when we talk about what is happening in Poland right now might mean for foreign affairs. I think that the relations with the president will play a certain role, not a decisive role, but a certain role in what can happen in foreign affairs, since some of the competencies overlap. And for the moment, as I already said, an ambassador, the relations and the competition with the president might be difficult, having in mind that he feels offended by what has happened, that his constitutional prerogatives have been somehow taken from him. So this is one thing that we need to remember. In terms of foreign policy, we haven't and European policy, we haven't seen much of that or strategies or ideas in the past month, even in the campaign, because the domestic situation is obviously a priority for the new government. In terms of, also we need to remember that the campaign has, I believe, played an important role in influencing the society, meaning the anti-EU campaign that has been led, that was led by PiS and by Konfederacja, the far right. So that is one thing. Anti-German sentiments that have been used, and we all know that that Donald Tusk has been accused of being either a German agent or a Russian agent. So this is somewhere something that that is there in the back. Of course, I don't believe it will influence the way the foreign ministry conducts relations with Germany. That may be in a second. I'm sure this is a pro-European government. Donald Tusk. This is obvious. This is also the campaign. We all know that. But however, as I said, issues that will be in front of the union, the reform of the union, migration, enlargement, ambitious climate policies. All these are topics that will be very difficult for the new government. A change that we will have in the European Union with the change of the Polish government is, of course, obvious, because this will be a more constructive approach. This will be a government that will be interested in solving problems, not creating them, and for sure not using foreign policy for domestic purposes. What I think, and I'm quite sure, and Donald Tusk together with the president have shown this in their meeting as well, is that defense issues and support for Ukraine, keeping support for Ukraine on the EU level and international level, NATO, these will be the two priorities, and these will be the issues where I don't expect serious problems in this cohabitation. For Donald Tusk, obviously, EU funds, in terms of the EU policies, EU funds will be very important. This is something that he also promised in the electoral campaign, and this is, of course, the whole rule of law issue, and probably also Poland's contribution to the rule of law debate and how rule of law in the future and can function within the EU. This might also be something that we will see and influence. So maybe I'll finish here, and then maybe afterwards I'll continue.
Great, thank you very much, Anna. Rolf, do you see these things in a similar way? Sort of, is the Tusk government sort of handicapped in its dealings with Germany, with the Weimar Triangle, with Europe?
Obviously, there are a number of problems. What we should expect, I think, is that there will be a change in climate. There will be a change in rhetoric, and there will be a change in substance when it comes to Polish relations to Europe in general. However, many of the other subjects that are at the moment debated, support for Ukraine, NATO membership, migration, etc., are of course issues in which I would not expect a big change in the new government. First of all, because there's a pressure from the inside, there's from the population, but there's also, of course, the government has to watch the criticisms and the instrumentalization by peace on some of these, specifically relations with Germany. So it's no surprise to me that so far it has the introductory visit of Polish politicians to Berlin have not taken place. First of all, because the internal situation, of course, needs attention, but also because one probably the new government wants to be very careful not to give any reason to the old government because of too close relations with Germany. Because of course Tusk has been dubbed a German agent and all these things. So I think we should be patient. We should not comment on these things, and we should also try to use what has happened in Poland in the European Union. Let's not forget. I mean, the Poles have demonstrated to the whole of Europe that you can change a populist, national conservative government in normal elections. You can do that. It's possible. And that's a message that's pretty vibrant for probably a number of other countries. Also, you can win elections against a powerful propaganda and the use of very many of quite substantial financial means. So that is hugely important for Europe, and it underlines the correctness of the policy of the European Union so far to insist on the rule of law and the fundamental norms of the European Union to be observed by everybody. So that's a very powerful message that we should keep in mind.
Thank you very much. Certainly, if we look to the European elections, where many people expect a sort of right-wing turn, but sort of in my personal opinion, I'm not so quite sure whether that will happen, but we'll see. It's almost 9, so please, if you want to get in the discussion, please raise your hand and put the question in person to the panel. I have already sort of noted a few questions in the chat, which while you maybe make up your mind whether you want to come in, I would put to the panel. Maybe start with the one which Peter Frey sort of first sort of formulated about whether we already see change in terms of public media, which I think was closed down, is being reopened. Is there sort of maybe something to Joanna, whether it's already noticeable that there's a change, sort of back to a sort of one-sidedness to a sort of public broadcasting as we know it in Germany and other countries where sort of it's more balanced. And the other question maybe for Rolf would be sort of on Ukraine, sort of what you see the sort of Polish position in terms of sort of supporting Ukraine. Maybe Joanna first.
In terms of the media, would you see a change in the stop of propaganda, meaning the media have been taken over by Polish, for example, the Polish TV, main TV station TVP and TVP Info, they have been taken over. The journalists that have been hired are working have been put in place to work in the place of journalists that have been formerly placed there by the peace government, have started working before the Christmas holidays, and in terms of what we see and how the news is presented, then yes, we see a change. This is a change for people. This has led to another TV station, TV Republika, to take over the role the public, the national media have played during peace. So so they have their viewers have their viewer platform has grown immensely of TV Republika. But we do see a change in the media. In terms of formal changes, this is still to be decided by the courts. We are still waiting a decision on whether the courts accept liquidation of the media, public media, that has been introduced by the Minister of Culture, Bartoszykiewicz. So this would allow the liquidators to make changes formally within the media, and so this is something that we will be still observing. So in terms of what is presented to the Polish public, yes. In terms of formal changes, this is still awaiting formal decisions.
Thank you very much. And Rolf, Nikel, maybe the question put by our colleague Nicola von Schöpf, whether what you expect sort of to happen on Polish-Ukrainian relations. We first of all, it both started off with a sort of amazing sort of welcoming refugees in vast numbers, and have been sort of strongest supporters. And at the just before we entered the hot phase of the campaign, we saw sort of a worsening of bilateral relations between Kyiv and Warsaw. What is your sense? Where are things going?
Well, it's a very important issue, of course. The hallmark of the former government in foreign policy really was an extension of domestic policy. Whatever domestic policy required on a specific issue, the Polish government would defend on the foreign scene. I would assume that under the new government, foreign policy gets a little bit more autonomy. That people will actually, that the leading elites on foreign policy will see more the strategic importance of Ukraine, and not so much how does that contribute to whatever feelings in domestic society. But we have to also take into account the fact that, I mean, the farmers, they have suspended their strike, or their occupation of the borders. The transport business is also quite critical. So the new government cannot move maybe as much as they want to. So, but what is important now is that we define our common Ukraine policy not as a beauty contest, who does more, who is better, whatever, but that we do things together, that we try to help Ukraine in a coordinated, coherent manner, not attacking Germany, for example, on the reparations issue, whereas a whole new war is raging. So we need to have coherence on this. That means a serious discussion in NATO about what we can do more to support Ukraine. Also, a serious discussion what we can do to further strengthen the eastern flank. And on the European level, I would say that Europe could benefit from an extension of the Weimar Triangle, that is France, Germany, and Poland, towards Ukraine. Not necessarily on all issues, but possibly on the issues of importance to Ukraine. So I think there are a number of opportunities here that I would think that the German government is ready to seize. The question is how far the new government can go without subjecting itself to too much internal criticism, which will be detrimental to the domestic agenda that the government, of course, the government is a priority. Yeah. So far from me, please.
Thank you very much.
I may just add something here that is in line with the ambassador said yesterday. Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Władysław Bartoszewski, spoke in the Parliament in the Committee for Foreign Affairs about the future of the Weimar Triangle and how the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is approaching the revival of relations within the Weimar Triangle. He said that there is a meeting of foreign ministers that is being prepared at the beginning of February in Paris, and that also a meeting of heads of state. This is something that is being discussed because the Weimar Triangle Poland was represented by the president. So this is again something that will happen, and that he said that the ministry would very much like to see also a cooperation between parliamentary diplomacy within the Weimar Triangle as well, because he mentioned that parliamentarians from these three countries met for the last time in 2016, so quite a long time ago. And he did mention the two issues, security and energy, as the issues that would be topics that would be seriously discussed in terms of how Poland sees it within this Weimar Triangle, and in terms of also relations with Ukraine, the concept of security, intensifying the defense industry within the European Union. So this is already happening, discussions within the parliament, the ministry. Deputy Minister Bartoszewski is also responsible for that. Marek Prawda, former ambassador, is also responsible for I don't know if rebuilding is the right word, but I will use it, rebuilding these good relationship and trust between Poland and Germany. So it is happening. We already see this and observe it in meetings. So Ukraine for sure the Weimar Triangle will be a platform also to discuss this issue.
Thank you very much. There was a very specific question by Götz Schellhaus, and I see him on my screen. Do you want to put your question in person?
It's the question that I have is really regarding the funding situation for Poland. How can it be approved by the Donald Tusk strategy or agenda going forward, given that there are so many billions locked in various funds? Donald Tusk gave an interview to Reuters a little while ago where he mentioned I think it's like 35 point something billion that are stuck in the recovery fund, and then there's also this cohesion fund that the EU has, and that's another 76 billion to improve living conditions, and they're all stuck given the concerns about judicial independence, and that's a lot of money for Poland too, I think. And is it visible how Donald Tusk can achieve that going forward to revise the big changes in the judicial system? I understand they've exchanged like 3,000 judges, and so what's the forward-looking perspective on that? Can Poland really get out of that misery? I mean, that's a question I think more to Mr. Nikel.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this very important question. First of all, it is clear, for reasons of not succumbing to double standards, that the milestones that the European Union set for receiving the European funds must be maintained. We cannot say, okay, this is a new government and a totally new situation, etc. So it's very clear that the European Union cannot give a rebate on this issue. That's one point. The second point, of course, is, and that is really the heart of the discussion this morning, is that it is very, very difficult to change the judicial system, because the president, of course, has a veto, and he would probably use that veto. And unfortunately, the government coalition does not have the necessary majority of 276 votes to override the veto. And also, there's the president could refer also whatever legislation the government prepares to come to the Constitutional Tribunal, which is composed of party goers of the peace. So it's very, very difficult now to change this. I alluded to that in my introductory remarks. It's very difficult to change these changes back in a rule of law manner, and not violating any important European points. So I would say that my prediction is that the government will in the end succeed, because the Third Polish Republic is essentially a parliamentary democracy. The power attributes of the prime minister interior minister, services, police, all report to the government. And if it comes to that situation, I think the government has the better cards. It's going to be at a very, very difficult situation, probably. Justice Minister has already prepared, as I said earlier, the fundamental part of the changes that peace introduced was the National Judiciary Council, which they changed from a cooptation body in which judges and other judges and prosecutors, etc., intervened in the nomination process to a political one. So they brought the National Judiciary Council under the political control of the government camp, and to change that's really the heart, and that is going to be very, very difficult. And but as I said at the end, I expect the government to succeed and to win, and I also very confident on the freedom tradition of our partners on our eastern border.
Did you offer a timeline for this? Because I mean, the big elephant in the room is Duda, right? He can block almost everything. They've worked on the background structure of the political system quite a bit over the last few years. So what do you see from your experience as a halfway probable timeline? Because I think it has got a lot to do of what Germany can do to improve relationships, but you can't really give money into a system that you're not sure will actually change.
If you are in such situations in which power is endangered, then you need to move fast, and I think that's exactly what the present government is doing. The Justice Minister has announced that he will present the law already in February on the National Judiciary Council. So I would assume that they will go fast, because you can never leave such a situation in limbo. Yeah. Exactly. And secondly, as Joanna pointed out, we have elections coming up, and the government has to deliver to its electorate on its promises. And the local, I mean, Kaczynski wants to use the local elections of April 7th, I believe, as a plebiscite against the government. That's quite clear. So they have to move before that and want to, I would assume, try to present things quickly and push it through quickly as well.
Okay, thank you.
Joanna, do you want to come in on that as well? Very short, maybe?
Yes, I think that the Commissioner Reinders is coming to Poland, and tomorrow he will be speaking to Minister Bodnar and Minister Schwabka to talk about the changes that are being made, and of course how to try to push things forward. Of course, having in mind the Commission is aware of the fact, and of course the Commission would like Poland to pass a bill changing the situation within the National Judiciary Council, because as Ambassador said, this is the most important issue to be taken care of, so that the recovery fund can be deblocked. That's the first step. The next step are the cohesion funds, and then we still have, as a third step in this road, we have also Article 7 that hasn't been mentioned. So these are the three steps that are ahead of us, and the Commission, of course, needs. It's not about only political declarations and goodwill of the Polish government. For example, joining the European Prosecutor's Office, that's also happening. And there's a delegation, Polish delegation, explaining and trying to fix out how this connection and joining the European Prosecutor's Office will happen. Also a change that is supposed to be introduced, trying to separate the Minister of Justice from the Prosecutor General. That's another change that is supposed to be happening here. So, but of course, it would be easiest and best for Poland to pass a bill. But since this is not possible, the government and the minister trying to introduce other forms of introducing changes that would be efficient. It seems that the Commission would be willing then to also agree on that, because making the changes through a bill was how peace negotiated the changes with the Commission. So now it's a question of negotiations, and this is happening, and this is perhaps the way to go forward. And I think what I heard was that in general the Commission expected the changes to happen in a 2-month period from December when Poland first asked for money to be deblocked. So it has to be happening. And again, what Ambassador said, these are the electoral campaign promises that need to be kept, and would be best for the governing party to have this before the local elections, because this is of course a change for different regions in Poland, different investments to go on, money to come in. So it should be happening, and negotiations are ongoing.
Thank you very much. And perhaps to round us off, and for a final question, I'd like to take the one by Ambassador Baumgarten, who is asking about sort of what is really keeping German policymakers awake at night, sort of another Trump government coming in after U.S. elections in November. Is this something? Is it for Poland? Is it also such a horror scenario? And sort of how big are the worries about a Trump administration making a great bargain with Russia ahead, sort of over the heads of the Europeans? Is this something which sort of occupies the Tusk government also? Maybe we start with Rolf Nikel, and then Joanna has the last one.
Yeah, that is I would assume a big conundrum for Poland as well. The old government tried to somehow have personal close relations and try to strike a bilateral specific relationship with America at the expense of the multilateral framework in which we all operate. I'm afraid that is going to be with a possible Trump 2 government. This is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible. I think that the second Trump government will be far worse than the first one, because it will be driven by revenge, and that will be very, very difficult, specifically for Poland, being very much exposed on the eastern flank. So I think that is a big worry to all of us. But I know from talks with people that, contrary to the old government, the new one is actually looking at Plan Bs in case Trump comes back. And we need to seriously discuss how we can, on the European front, how we can somehow try to deal with that. Let's say in changes in the European security and the defense policy, making that much more important. Possibly also by changing NATO nuclear posture and things like that. So I think what needs to be done is not just sitting in the corner and waiting and worrying, oh my God, what is going to happen? But rather, how can we create objective, positive situations to deal with that? I think that's a very, very important question, and many brilliant minds, I guess, are using their brain power to solve that.
Well, fingers crossed. Joanna, what is your take?
Definitely, I think that strategically the government will be speaking both to the Republicans and the Democrats. This is a little bit so what is necessary, and having in mind that a Trump government is not something that we cannot imagine happening later this year. But strategically, this fear of a Trump government will be the driver of, I think, Polish European policy. So that everything that we have said, meaning the support, keeping up the support for Ukraine, and keeping this high on the agenda, the defense capabilities, this all will be led by the Polish government, having in mind that there might be a Trump government, also relations within NATO. So and also I think that something that is also very important in terms of the U.S. future, because a Trump government I think is also important in terms of how will we keep European Union's unity, what will happen if there is a Trump government. So keeping European unity, and this is all depends on elections happening also this year in other European countries, because we see the far right in many countries gaining voters, becoming second political forces, and so the mainstream political parties will have to think about the future also of the union and unity if there is a Trump government. So this will be important also for Poland's new leadership maybe role within the European Union. So yes, I think that in terms of domestic policy, but in terms of Poland's foreign NATO EU policy, this perspective, not to use the word fear, of a Trump government will have influence, have a lot of influence.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to bring this morning briefing to a close. Please join me in thanking our two excellent speakers, Joanna Becker and Ambassador Rolf Nikel. I hope to see you soon again at the German Council on Foreign Relations, and I'm wishing you all a very good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.